My friends, this is Trevor. As you know, we do not accept sponsorship on the podcast. I want to make sure that I always deliver on my goal and intention, which is to provide unadulterated, incredible conversations that add value as a high-performing human being and as an entrepreneur. So, to maintain that level of integrity, I have decided to never accept sponsorship on the podcast. Now, that means it's all self-funded and it's all done internally by my team out of pocket as a labor of love. There is a way that you can support us though. I am starting a black card label mastermind, whatever you want to call it, an inner circle, the Trevor Chapman mastermind, wherein I'll be giving you everything I've ever created. You'll have direct access to me. I'll be showing you how I went from a 0 to 1 million followers in 45 days, 0 to top 5 podcast in 20 days, 0 to 8-figure sellout in 12 months, 0 to $1 million in 90 days online. Everything that I'm doing, you're going to see how I'm doing it. And because it is not officially launched yet, and I'm pre-launching it to my loyal podcast listeners, if you go to trevorchapman.com/podcast VIP, you will get early access. trevorchapman.com/podcast VIP. Welcome, friends, to the Trevor Chapman Show. This is Trevor, and I am here giving you a short preamble to this incredible podcast conversation that I have with a personal mentor of mine, Jason Cisneros. Jason lives in the same state as I. We connected online, found out that we lived not far from each other, had many great conversations, met in person, and this guy has fundamentally altered a few of the ways that my worldview, my framework in life. And so I was excited to have this conversation with him. We had tried 4 or 5 times, and for whatever reasons, it hadn't worked in the past scheduling. So this was like a release. Finally, we have this conversation. He's going to give a lot of incredible information, stories, and experiences. Now, there is a little warning that there is foul language in this particular podcast. And there are some topics, because he's involved with the Child Liberation Foundation and Operation Underground Railroad, where they talk about trafficking of underage children. There is conversation about that. And that's a heavy topic. It's not light. So for anybody that does not want to hear the foul language, and I'm talking about kind of Tony Robbins style. By the way, Jason Cisneros is a personal friend of Tony Robbins. They work on these projects together. They fly around together. If you're uncomfortable with that, please don't continue listening. If you're willing to set that aside or you're cool with it, great. This is an excellent conversation I have. Without further ado, my friends, welcome to the Trevor Chapman Show. Welcome, my friends, to the Trevor Chapman Show. This is Trevor, and this is our place, yours and mine, where we talk and learn from the best minds on this beautiful earth about entrepreneurship, achievement. We are purveyors of the good life, curating environments that promote and even demand kairos moments of success, happiness, and euphoric achievement. I mean, we work relentlessly to attain levels of the highest performance in business and life. Here is to our collective happiness and to celebrating our human experience. My friends, it's time to run. Welcome, everybody, to the Trevor Chapman Show. This is Trevor. I am beyond excited today to chat with an individual that I met a while ago. And since then, through our interaction, this guy has become kind of like this virtual mentor. I watch what he's doing, watch his lives, and it's a guy that's just full of all kinds of interest. And while we often have people that are kind of cut from the same cloth, this guy is not cut from the same cloth. And I love that. I feel like I'm not cut from the same cloth. I'm sure that a lot of you feel that same way. So without going on a long preamble, Jason Cisneros, welcome to the podcast. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on the show, Trevor. Really looking forward to it, brother.
Absolutely, man. Hey, so for people that may not be familiar with you, let's start with like a 60,000 foot overview of who you are, who you were 10, 20 years ago, and the person that you are today, what you're known for.
Okay, yeah, let's get that out of the way so we can start talking about your audience. But I think the thing that people know me for the most is I came out of a very strained childhood, to say the least. My adopted father broke my nose over a couple of dozen times, and he ended up going to prison when I was 17 for attempted murder of me and my mom. I was a drug dealer. I was a collector. I did what I knew coming up, and then basically through a series of football, wrestling coaches, and people that were just insane in my mind reached out to me and helped me turn my life around. It led to a place where I got stabbed in the chest, almost killed, and one of my last drug deals was the same week that my first son was born, and changed my life from there. I just decided to get out and to start from the bottom up, and that's led to a lifetime of amazing experiences since then. Well, there's a lot of amazing experiences before then, but I didn't like those as much as I like the ones I'm having today. So
awesome, man. Love it. So when you decided to get out of that, did you experience a sensation of loss at all? And I ask that only because when I transitioned from what I had been doing for over a decade to something new, I was excited, but what I did not anticipate was this sensation of loss. Like it just gone. Did you feel that?
Yeah, it's a powerful question, and it's a powerful awareness for your listeners to hear that, because there was a loss of identity. I mean, remember, up until the time that I stopped, I was going to go out in a blaze of glory, whether that meant gunshots with cops or a amazing drug deal gone bad, or something that was just gonna end up being epic, right? And I was known in my nickname was Psycho. So I can tell you that that those were the days. I mean, it wasn't about living long, it was about living hard and living fast. And it was interesting because the sense of loss was identity. I went from that kind of lifestyle and doing things that most people, I mean, it was a very close-knit group of guys that I ran with, and going from that to my very first, second legitimate job. I had a job at McDonald's while I was hiding from the cops one time. That's another story. But anyway, my first legit job when I got out of the lifestyle was peeling logs for, literally hand peeling. You've seen those hand peelers, right? They're scraping the bark off of logs for log cabins. And, $6.50 an hour ish. And zero excitement. Like there was no adrenaline.
No rush.
No nothing. And as I started into that lifestyle, there was a sense of loss of identity for sort of the crazy man that I was. And I always had, like, you know a little bit about me, and you and I've gotten to become friends. And my biggest thing is loyalty to my crew, loyalty to my tribe, loyalty to my people. And that was a big deal for me, was to be able to have people's backs. And I was really, really good at fighting, and wouldn't let most of my friends fight. I would always take over and handle it for them. And, when you get into the business world, especially when you're a low-level laborer, finding that kind of loyalty and tribe and sense of purpose is difficult. So it's very, very brilliant of you to bring up the idea that when you change from one lifestyle to another, you're going to lose a sense of identity, even if that identity is a shitty one, right?
Yeah. So how did you stay the course? In my talking with people, I found that most everybody attempts to make that shift, like what we're talking about right now. But very few successfully make it because it's so much easier to go back. What was it that kept you walking the path?
Well, you've heard it said that if, the people will do way more for other people than they will do for themselves. Yeah. And what made me shift, remember, was my first son being born. And when he was born, there was something, I don't know where it came from. I know it came from my grandmother at some point, because she, took us to church, and my mom would try to sneak us off to church every once in a while to try to have some semblance of a reality. And one of the things that I heard was the sins of the father would be born onto the children, or to the sons, right? And it really stuck with. And I think I'm not a religious guy at all. I'm certainly not a churchgoer. I believe that there's a higher power, and I'm not him or her. That's the only thing that I know. So, so that being said, I didn't want my son to be raised in that environment. I didn't want any of my kids, future or present, to end up living that lifestyle, because it's a dead end. It was always a dead end, and it just mattered. When they say OG, right? OG is original gangster. It's a symbolism of respect, because there's not very many of them. If you're a gangster, you don't get to be old. So this is the kind of thing. So I stuck it out because I wanted to, and here's where, that we hear all these things, right? I'm really I do my best to break open the fortune cookie bull crap motivational speaker type information that you get. Like, you'll do more for other people. I just broke it down for you why that was real in my life. I will do more for my family, for my son, for my friends than I will ever do for myself. And what I wanted for my son was for him to have a father that, even if I wasn't notorious, that it would be something that he could look to respect. And you know where that came from. And this is the most important thing. It's not about my story. It's never about anybody's story, really. It's about how you can apply this information to what's going on in your own life. And where I got that was from the mentors: Charlie White, my wrestling coach, Daryl Holt, my football coach. These guys believing in me and reaching into my life, and taking me and putting me in wrestling, where like there was no reason in the world why they should have reached into my life and pulled me out. Daryl Holt, my football coach in high school, and putting me on those plays. Tim Foley, Tony Robbins, who's now a longtime mentor of mine. These kind of people reach in, and they give you that little spark of hope. They give you that little spark of belief. They give you an idea that, it doesn't have to end in a fiery mess. It doesn't. You can be a good person and really leave a bigger mark than if you're a maniac, right? So I think that mentorship, and even those small words of encouragement, I do it all the time, Trevor. I mean, people reach out on Facebook and Instagram, and where I've heard a lot of other people, they won't respond to those messages. I try to get back to everybody, because you never know. I mean, it was Tony Robbins looking at me innocuously, grabbing my hand and saying, "I believe you," that changed my life at a massive level. And I know 100% I was one of millions of people that he said that to, and probably insignificant to him, but to me it meant the world, and it did a world of difference for me. So that's why we always got to be conscious of, the more selfish we are, the more introspective, the more pain we're going to experience, the more other centric and people serve. I talk about the two things that I know for sure. I want to use my time on earth to become the best me I can possibly be for the purpose of serving other people. And I keep it really, really simple that way. And that's what actually helped me. The longevity was the input from other people, believing in me when they shouldn't have, and knowing and understanding that I was leaving a legacy for my kids. And what kind of legacy was it going to be?
I love that, man. It's astounding to me. And I try to wrap my head around this on a surface level. I can, in my own mind at least, somewhat comprehend at least the observable fact of what you talked about. But I try to follow through with the implications. And it's something that's really hard for me to grasp. And what I mean by that is this. In 2008, I lost my identity, like everything, my self-confidence, absolutely all of it. Young 20-year-old, 24, 23, whatever I was, had super success. I grew up below the poverty line, never had something new in my life ever, and had very little. And it wasn't like I was mowing, I had to catch food every day in Alaska so we could make it through the winter. So I went from that to having some amount of what I thought was success. And in 2008, when it all fell apart, everything fell apart for me. And I look back and I'm grateful because there are a few principles that I took away from that I have applied. And I've talked about them before. There's business things like I was in an accessory business. I needed to get into the necessity business. Things don't cancel. And I've talked about this before with my audience, but the one thing I don't think I've talked about is this realization that I had by experiencing it, that the things that we seek in life are camouflaged in virtue of themselves. And what I mean by that is this: if I want to be happy, at that point, I wanted to be happy. Like everything was falling apart. I just sought a little bit of peace, man, a little bit of tranquility. That's all I wanted. And I realized, and we hear this, but we don't realize it until we experience it. I realized that for me to be happy, I was saying me, I focused on myself. And the more that I did that, the further I walked away from happiness. It was only when I looked and put as the first priority the happiness of others that I found happiness. On a practical level, if I'm tired, my instinct would be to lay on the couch, eat potato chips, and take a nap. But I will wake up not refreshed. If I exhaust myself at the gym or outside or whatever, then I come back energized. And I find that fascinating, that what seems intuitive is rarely the actual path. So realizing that, when I look at things, especially business things, I consider that. And you taking businesses and turning them around, owning dozens of them, does that concept apply when you turn a business around, that what would seem the path, the generic path, rarely tends to be the right path?
Well, let's dig in. I love the question, brother. It's such an intellectual look. I think the only thing that we have in this world that's our competitive advantage is our work ethic and our intellect. Okay, and it's such an intellectual question to ask, because diving into businesses and the traditional, I think you called them generic, right? The generic ideas are really the ideas of the herd, right? Of the masses. And the masses are broke, they're sad, they're sick, they're depressed, they're divorced. They're like, if you look at the masses, what they do is very seldom the right thing to be doing. And it's crazy. Like and people should understand. It's like when everybody's getting into Bitcoin, guess what I was doing? I'm getting the hell out. Like when everybody, during 2008, and by the way, like, you're not alone. 90% of the rest of the world got their asses handed to them during that period of time. And the problem is that it really wasn't your activities that you were doing. It was the environment that was set up by this oligarchy. And we won't get into that right now. But the point being is that when you're doing what everybody else is doing, you're 99.999% going to be doing the wrong thing. And probably of that 99.999%, at least 90% of that, you should be doing exactly the opposite. Okay. Now that doesn't apply. Let's use some real world examples. Okay. Real world examples. So it's not a fortune cookie. What I'm saying is, let's take a janitorial company, right? And this is one of multiple. I own several janitorial companies in my portfolio, and one of the things that they were doing, and what I say what the industry, what everybody in that world was doing, not everybody. Remember, there's a small percentage, because we always get blasted by, no, I wasn't doing that. Like, that's the people that respond to these things instead of listening to them, right? You said everybody. Well, okay, not you. You're the special flower, okay? I put that out so they don't have to hammer us with, the trolls. So anyway, but the point being is that a lot of times what they would try to do, people were hiring, and still do to this day, to be frankly honest with you, which I don't understand. They're trying to pay the least amount possible that they can for a service that is ultimately important for the upkeep and maintenance of their facility. And so they would drive the price down, drive the price down, drive the price down, which meant that you had to start paying people less and less and less, paying them less and less and less. And then, and then you start trading around at the bottom. So there's this huge turnover rate in customers. There's this huge turnover rate in employees. And all I did was say, we need to change this, right? Whatever the driving, and I wasn't somebody who's really familiar with janitorial. In fact, of my portfolio of businesses that I own, I know very little about how to do any of them. What I do know is the principles of business and how to set that up, which is obviously why we started the consulting company. And that consulting company, it has another purpose. That consulting company, we don't help people that are just trying to fix their company so that they can make more money and buy more cars and buy a bigger house. We specifically align behind companies that are already doing something good. They're donating to their church. They're pitching in for cancer. They're feeding people. They're doing something good. And we come in and we help accelerate their amount of money they can make in the time that they have so that they can do more good. That's the pebble in the pond response for me. I don't need to have a consulting company. In fact, it's run by some of my other team based on my principles, but that's the purpose behind it. So when you look at, it's everybody's got high turnover. Everybody's got high turnover with customers and employees. What are the things that are important? Keeping the people first, right? You focus on how can I make this environment to where they're happy? How can I make it to where they don't want to leave? How can I make it to where they want their family members to come work there? And how can I make it to where they're making so much money with me that they won't go anywhere, right? That's an investment. And so you invest in that. And then the backside of that is that you do such a good job for your customer. You reinvent the conversation that you've got with your client. And you say, look, you may think that janitorial is not important, but let me tell you where it affects and impacts your bottom line. The people that work here don't want to work in a crappy environment. The people that are coming through your building as customers and clients don't want to come into a place that's not well kept up. How much time are you spending calling on your own dime to call and follow up with these other low-priced quantities? And if once you start to quantify the thing that exists, they go, oh, we probably should be paying a little bit more. But nobody stands up to people that keep driving the price down and saying, you know what, that's low enough. Matter of fact, you can have that experience, but here's where it's costing you in other areas. It's called using your intellect. It's called doing something other than everybody else is doing. And we transformed in that industry. We transformed literally every metric that people use as an excuse. We've transformed those metrics into our strengths. And that's just one example. So, so your question is, where are people doing what everybody else is doing? I can pretty much tell you that that's usually a formula for failure. And then doing the opposite of that and taking on those norms. I'll tell you what owning multiple companies in multiple different verticals has done for me is it's given me this ability of something called cross-pollination. Okay? Cross-pollination, simply put, is being able to see outside of your small circle and see options that can be applied to your unique, your industry's unique challenges, right? So if I go outside and I've got full service car washes, I might find something that will help my janitorial company. I might find something in my janitorial company that will cross-pollinate into my animation business. I might find something in my animation business that will cross-pollinate into my solar company. So across the board, right? There's this thing called cross-pollination. And we don't get out of our own neighborhoods, so to speak. And I mean this mentally, emotionally, geographically, and psychographically. We don't get out of our own neighborhoods ever enough to see what are they doing in Japan that may work here, right? What are they doing? The people that cook biscuits in the morning, what are they doing that I could apply to my real estate business, or blah, 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 blah. It's called cross-pollination. Well, cross-pollination takes another attribute called humility. In other words, I don't know everything. Therefore, I keep an idea, a mind, a brain set out there of wanting to learn things. So I know that was a long-winded answer to your question, but These are the things that I've employed specifically in my business and in charities to say, why is everybody failing in this particular metric? What if we switch that piece around? What if we came up with a unique approach? And as Jay Samit says in his book, Disrupt You, you're either disrupting, you're either innovating, or you're dying. Period. End of sentence.
That's fascinating. So one of the things that I've tried to incorporate is, years ago I read that Japanese companies will have multi-century business plans. And when I heard that, it caused me to really pause and reflect, because I had been wrestling with this concept. Jeff Bezos said, if you start with an exit strategy in mind, you are not pursuing your passion. That affected me, because I am a passionate individual. Passion is so critical to my life. I think most people. Yet most of what I was doing was based on this exit someday. And it may not be an actual acquisition. It may have been getting it to the point where I wasn't involved in the day-to-day. But it caused me to pause and reflect. And when I married the feelings and the ideas that emanated from that moment, when I heard him say that, with this idea of multi-century business plans, a business plan that lasts 200-300 years, it fundamentally changed the way that I looked at what I was doing. And it allowed me, instead of sprinting like a maniac, to use your terminology, every year, to step back and, I feel at least, achieve far more on the spectrum than I was when I was short-sighted. And I was short-sighted simply because everyone's like, in 10 years, only 98% of business, or 98% fall out of business. You can't have a 5-year business plan. Everything changes. And I understand what they mean by that. But my own temperament changed when I considered this idea that you're talking about, which is cross-pollination, looking at what other people are doing. There's this interesting thing. I want to change for just a moment, because before I forget this, I want to tell you, you had a massive impact on me on a short phone call that we had. And I haven't shared this with you, and I want to share it with you. I believed that I was more or less impervious to others' opinions. I truly believed that. And to back that up without patting myself on the back, just giving you facts, I've had many buddies of mine that make 7 and 8 figures say to me, dude, you're the most confident person we know. Now I laugh, because they never have been inside my own mind. Right. They don't understand my inner struggles. But this idea of how other people perceive you is fascinating to me. And I've explored that. And having been named this, I believe I started to kind of take on this idea. But when I spoke to you on the phone, I shared with you something that I had never shared with anybody else. And I realized it's because maybe I'm not as confident as others think I am. I was worried about the opinion. What I shared with you was that when I go to events, it kills me if I'm not the one on the stage speaking. And what I have never done, because you brought up humility, and I realize it's this thing I'm still struggling with, but the idea that I just fundamentally can't stand in line with everyone else and take a photo with this speaker and post that on Facebook. It's this thing that drives me insane. Now, I have a buddy, Jesse Elder. He talks about the slippery slope of language. I've tried to really articulate those feelings since then. In fact, I did it from stage, and it was horrendous, dude. No one took a picture with me afterwards. There was a handful. I got on the next day because I was speaking twice. I got on the next day. I was like, guys, look, that was just a poor judgment on my fault. Poor judgment. And so, afterwards, they did. But it was hilarious to see this, dude. And but I told you that, man, and you kind of set me free by saying, I forget what you said, but something like birds of a feather, like you feel the same way. I think there's people out there that feel that beyond just this small circle. What can you articulate that? What is that? And who in your circle have you noticed feels that way? What's that a sign of? Can you dissect that?
Well, there's two sides, okay? The first answer that I'm going to give you is nobody really gives a shit about us anyway. Okay? This is the biggest freeing moment for myself. I was sitting there and I'm like, it was the most lonely moment and the most freeing moment in literally in a heartbeat, boom, boom, that fast. And it came to me like, we do these things. Men do these things for women. In a lot of instances, we do a lot of the grandiose sort of things because we want our women to love us, or we want the attention of a woman, right?
Right.
And I know I'm being sexist and old fashioned, and I'm making mistakes, and I'm going to get yelled at by all of the different groups that exist out there. Call it masculine and feminine energy. Okay. Masculine energy is wanting to get the attention of a lover. Okay. In that feminine. And we do a lot of things. And then in your own family, right? People develop an idea like when you're being raised, Jason is this, Trevor is this, he has these traits. And then you hear that over and over and over again. And then to be anything but that becomes out of alignment with your character, right? And so we don't ever stop and think about how much of what we do is set up inherently to get the approval of other human beings, right? Period.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't think about it. Now, when you do think about it, you think, I think about my mom. The person who I believe loves me on the face of the planet more than anybody is my mother. And I got to thinking that day, I'm like, you know what? My mom, who I love dearly and who loves me dearly, who is she thinking about most of the time? Herself. Because it's self-preservation. We live in this world. Yes, she was thinking about me. Yes, she loved me. Yes, she cared about me. But at the end of the day, the amount of time that she spent actually thinking about me was very minuscule. And it's the same exact thing for all of us. People just aren't thinking about you. They're just not. Even when you do something wrong, and which gives them, this is when they spend the most time of paying attention to you. They literally, like, the most time that they ever spend is when you, all of the mistakes that I've made. I cheated in a marriage. I bankrupted a company. I lost my money. I lost other people's money. There's all these things. I went to jail. I was the drug dealer. All of the things that most people try to hide and get freaked out whenever I say them. I'm like, I don't give a shit. Nobody's ever going to have leverage over me. And at the end of the day, you don't really think about me anyway, unless it's in direct proportion to what I can do for you or what I'm in your own mind taking away from you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's how important we become, is whether what I'm adding to someone or whether what I'm in their mind perceived as taking away from them. And that is what we get down to. We're living that most of us that don't know this, that don't understand this awareness, are living a life. We're living this life that is in a box that has been developed and shaped by someone else. We've never stopped to think, who is Trevor actually? Right? Who is Trevor? He may not like to have a picture taken with a celebrity because he wants to be top dog and blah, blah, blah. And maybe that because everybody else that does take those things, you perceive them as weak, right? Or needy or followers or whatever you've put together in your own mind. I'm not a big fan of it unless it advances an agenda. Okay. And that agenda for me that I spend most of my time in now is charity, because me standing right next to, like my Facebook post right now, I'm standing right next to Matthew McConaughey, right? And the reason is because he has more eyeballs. Those eyeballs I can borrow from him and then multiply for Feed a Billion, for Child Liberation Foundation, for A New Dawn, for domestic violence, for sex trafficking, for world hunger, for whatever the cause may be. He happens to be a celebrity, and those eyeballs will now expand for the things that I would like them to expand for. That's the proper use of celebrity, I believe, is easing suffering in the world, right?
Yeah.
And then, but as you know, there is a flip side of this, and I literally just talked about it on my Facebook Live today, where I was breaking down and dissecting my last 5 years in philanthropy of what these two groups of people, right? There's a whole bunch of people that show up to celebrity galas and charity galas and all those other kind of things. There's two groups of people that show up. One are the people that come there because they're genuinely wanting to ease suffering in the world, and they see somebody taking action on doing that. And they come there to resource that outcome with money or their time. Okay, those are the two things, or they're celebrity. Okay, the flip side of that, and I've seen this so much in the last 5 years, is when somebody throws little galas and they're doing it for posterity's sake and for charities, and they won't charge anything because ultimately we'd love to have people show up, donate some money, blah blah blah. The people that come to those free shows, they come there, they get a lot of attention, they take a lot of pictures on the red carpet, and they make sure that everybody on Facebook or everybody on social media has seen them there, and then they don't open their wallet for a damn thing. They use it to drive business for themselves, and those people make me sick to my stomach. Okay, they make me sick, and that's what I've seen. Those are the two groups that you have. And anything good can be bastardized, right? Anything good can be torn down. I mean, Mother Teresa has a hate group, right? Which blows me away. People that absolutely don't like Mother Teresa. So if she can get a hate group, then I don't feel so bad about mine, right? But the point being is that they're inherent in each one of us. We're all doing the best we can with what we have. And we all inherently know that there's more for us to be able to offer. And when we know that there's more to offer, how are we doing so, right? It doesn't come down to, I have to be on stage if I'm at one of these events. 1%, when you're doing the right thing, when you look at my life, 1% is like on stage and doing these things that we're talking about. The rest of it is actually in the dark of night going in and doing rescues, the dark of night going in and pulling domestic violence people out of their homes, resourcing those people who do that same work, and helping businesses grow that are already doing good things so that I don't have to be the only one with the only checkbook in the room. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So as you look at your life right now, there's a question that I'll ask myself often because it impacts what I do in this very present moment, this fleeting shard of time. How much of your desires right now, today, over that little while, have truly been your desires, and how many of them did you think, or do you think, you are just supposed to desire?
Love it. Fantastic question. There's a great, you know who Og Mandino is, right?
Yes. Yeah. The best sales are the salesman, the guy that wrote the greatest salesman in the world and other books.
Yeah. Fantastic information, multiple levels. Dave and Paul Blanchard, two very, very dear friends of mine, run the Og Mandino Leadership Institute. Okay. And they developed over time, this true assessment. And if you go there and you say my name, they'll let you actually take that $99 thing for free. But and I think it's just look up the Og Mandino Leadership Institute. I don't know their website or anything, but mention my name and they'll let you take this thing for free. What it does is it has 6 quadrillion responses capable in it. And what it does is it uncovers your actual habits of what you're doing and the reasons why, what drive them behind them. And this question that you ask me is, how congruent do I feel with the actions I take all day versus what I've been programmed to want to do? Okay, it's a very good question. And what this assessment did, and I did it live on Facebook, by the way, and I think we posted it to my Anton J. Global Facebook page and also my public page, the Jason Cisneros page on Facebook, where he does this live. He never, in over 1,000 assessments, had they done it live. They did it live because, as you know, Trevor, you and I know, I'm very much into transparency. Mm-hmm. That's why I tell all my garbage, is because I don't want anybody to ever look at me and go, oh, he thinks he's better than anybody else. No, I really don't. That's a matter of fact. In fact, I'm worse than a lot of people. And the difference is I try not to make the same mistakes twice. But I don't hide shit because this is a day and age where you can't hide shit anyway. You might as well get with the plan, so whatever you've done wrong, somebody's going to find out about it. If you've even slightly done something wrong, people will lie about you. So you might as well tell your own story than letting somebody else take it. So the point that this assessment gives you, that you take with them, is that it tells you specifically what your habits are and how congruent you are in those areas of your life. So out of the thousands that had been done, hundreds of thousands, he said they've never seen someone so congruent with what they're doing versus and opposed to their happiness about what they're doing. I am 100%, almost 100%. I think it was 97% in alignment with those things, but it wasn't. It hasn't always been that way, Trevor. And the reason is because these things that I'm talking to you about doing things opposite of the crowd, about being very transparent, about making sure that whatever it is that I'm trying to develop or work on today is in alignment. And I'm going to give your words. I think you said it was the century, right? Mm-hmm. The Japanese concept of multi-centuries. What you're talking about there is something that's called legacy. What do you want to leave behind after you die? Because really, people don't, you're going to be battling with and at war with 90% of the people that you're dealing with in this lifetime. And then after you're gone, and what you leave behind is what you're going to be remembered for. Even your enemies, if you do the right things, will praise your name. And so legacy. So the multi-century approach that you talked about earlier, what it flashed up in my mind, because that's really great planning for a corporation. Most of the buildings that were built in Rome were built by multi-century families. I mean, the grandfather never got to see the thing completed. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the father didn't. Sometimes it was the son that actually got to see the thing completed. But they actually saw it completed. So that's a really great idea for a company, a corporation, something that you want to keep going that will support your family beyond your death. I love that. Now, legacy, in my opinion, is the individual. It's where you take it back to you and you say, okay, what do I want my legacy to be? Because that's the biggest value that you can leave behind for your family. In my family, one of the biggest reasons, as I looked back throughout the history of my family, not very many people that I could point to were added much value to the world at all. And so what I said was, if I'm going to build a legacy, I want to make a dent in the universe and ultimately want to ease suffering for those that are weaker, more vulnerable, or looking for a hand up, right? Not a hand out, but a hand up. And that's, so now I have a filter by which I filter all of my opportunities. If I would have had this when I was younger, I wouldn't have lost money. I wouldn't have gone bankrupt. I wouldn't have hurt the people that I loved in my life. I wouldn't have made bad decisions, because I would have had a very good filter that said, this activity I'm about to go through, because I used to say, if I'm doing something out of love, if I'm doing something out of passion, if I'm doing something out of the right intention, then it can never be wrong. And that is total 100% bullshit. What you need to have is a great intent. You want to be serving in love, but you've got to have a great strategy that sees down the road to see what's the worst case scenario, right? If I would have done that with some of the opportunities in my life earlier, I would have looked down the road and went, oh no, that's going to hurt my friends. That's going to hurt my family. That's going to hurt my ability to create finances. That's going to hurt my integrity. That's going to hurt my reputation. All of these things, and I wouldn't have done it. But when you don't have that legacy view, when you don't have that multi-century view for your own family, and not only do you not have it, but you take zero responsibility for it in your own life, then you're going to live someone else's life. End of sentence. Okay. So this multi-century view, this legacy view, is so important for people to say, what is the dent that I want to make in the universe? What is the good that I can leave behind? What do I want my family reputation? What do I want my family legacy to be? And then everything goes into that. That's why I have the consulting company. It goes into leading that. I can help more businesses make more money that does more good than I can with my own wallet and my own time. I have the profits and the set up with the companies that I actually own myself, going towards domestic violence and giving jobs to those types of and opportunities to those types of people, and then the charities that I work on. It's easing suffering. I'm helping them learn how to run real organizations. I'm helping them learn how to get sustainable donations so that they can keep doing the good work that they're doing. And then the time that I spend with my kids and my family, these all flow together. And if it's outside of that premise, if you as a human being that comes into my life is somebody that wants to take me off center because of your drama, your bullshit, your lies, your greed, your opportunities. These are the things that have pulled me off in the past. The only reason why I can speak with clarity about them, Trevor, is because I made those mistakes. I am not a saint. What I'm saying is I'm a warning. In the earlier part, Tony Robbins says there's two things. You're either a warning or you're an example. In my earlier career, I was a warning, a big warning of what not to do. You should look at the things that Jason Cisneros did at that point in his life and go, I don't want anything to do with that stuff. Now you can say, okay, here, what is he doing now that has changed his income, his family, his friends, his stability, the impact that he's having on the world? What is he doing now? Right? Those are the things. I'm both. I always, I never wanted to say that my life was a warning. And I think that that's what most of us are hiding, is that we don't want to, we get stuck in a place where we get a DUI or we cheat in our marriage or we make a bad decision. We get thrown in jail. We make those bad decisions. And then everybody that's around us wants us to stick a pin in that spot in our life and say, now you fucked up and you failed, stay there. Right? You failed, I want you to stay there, because that's their form of control. And more importantly, it's our form of control, where we look at that and we go, okay, I tried, I messed up, I'm done. Now I'm going to spend the rest of my life on the internet trolling everybody else and making sure that everybody else is taken down a notch, because I feel so bad about myself. Anytime you're complaining about somebody on the internet, I know that there's bad people out there, but you know what? In this day and age, you're either adding value or you're not. If you're adding value, you should be advancing. If you're not, you're going to go out of business. Very, very simple premise. So, but at the end of the day, most people we control ourselves, and we allow other people to control us because of the mistakes that we make in our lives. That's why the most important thing that you can do is tell your worst enemy your deepest secret. Tell them and let them put it out on Facebook. Tell them and let them, because I've had those people. You've had these people, I'm sure, Trevor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where
absolutely.
They can't wait. Oh, Trevor's up a notch, and I just can't wait to tell you what he did when he was 23. What he did when he was 24. Guess what he did when we were at a bar in Cancun, and fuck off. I'm not that person anymore. I'm a better version by far than I was back then. And yes, I did things that were horrible, things that were bad mistakes, things that put me in jail, things that made me go bankrupt, things that made me lose my marriage and separated me from my children, and those kinds of decisions were my own decisions. And that's what, I don't hold on to those anymore. If I would have died back then, right? I might have still been breathing, but I would have died back then. And I have lived 17 lifetimes since then, because I decided not to allow other people to dictate who I am and where I'm going with my life.
Dude, that is incredible. That's an incredible framework for life. I think we don't have enough frameworks. And so it's incredible that you actually have that, and that you're able to perceive opportunities, people, thoughts, etc., based on more than just the emotion of the moment. In college, I eventually just dropped out. It was part of my silent protest, that so many kids in college have. I wanted to be successful without the college degree. And that's besides the point. What I studied eventually was philosophy. And I studied philosophy because it was the only subject matter that post-class I felt like I had, as an individual, absolutely changed. Mm-hmm. Everything else that I had done prior, broadcast journalism and all this, I was studying how many acres Ted Turner owned, year 5 of CNN. What does that have to do with anything? I just couldn't wrap my head around it. But the idea in philosophy that I really grabbed onto was this idea of eudaimonia, which was this belief that the Greeks and other schools or other surrounding civilizations and the schools of thought had, that everything we do because, and that because ladder continues, because it will bring this, because it will cause that, because I'll feel this way. And ultimately it leads back to eudaimonia, or however you want to translate today, happiness, tranquility, peace, and they can be bad things too. We all have our own, what is our eudaimonia? Mm-hmm. So I'll start by saying, I want to always have mine be tranquility and peace of mind.
Right.
You know, peace of mind, I just can't put a value on that. If you're always looking over your shoulder, if you're always concerned, that's just a bad way to live. Mm-hmm. But I often find that sometimes my version of eudaimonia changes, and it changes to significance.
Right.
And I don't want it to, because it's exactly what you just said. No one around me cares. Like, they don't. But I think that they do, and I feel more validated when I'm stopped to have a picture taken with me than not. And so I have these two personalities. The one is, you know, on the beach solo, you know, some yogi that's lived for 100 years. And the other one is this rock star. Yep. And I'm still trying to marry the two and fully understand myself. But what is yours? Oh, well, what is that thing that maybe you wish you could change, like that significance for me? And what is that noble one? And you talked a lot about it already with your framework with life, but to really succinct it in one or two words.
Yeah, it's called progress.
I mean,
okay. It really comes down to progress, and there's parts like, and this is the thing, Trevor, that I think that I hear you struggling with, that I think is very, very valuable for your audience, is you're struggling with an identity that you think one is good and one is bad, or one is better, or you know what I mean? Like and this is something I don't struggle with at all anymore. Now I used to, but I don't struggle with it at all anymore, because I am 100% okay. Sometimes I'm a rock star, you know, I mean, I'm on stages all over the place. I've been on TV, and sometimes I'm at the beach, and I'm equally happy and in alignment with either one of those, because they have something built into it. It's called incremental progress. Okay. Incremental progress can only be built if you are measuring yourself towards an outcome. You can't have incremental progress. This is the problem. Everybody's like, well, if I wonder if I'm trying to be too much of a rock star. I wonder if I'm spending too much time on the beach. I wonder if I'm, you know, blah, blah, blah. Life is this dance between light and dark, brother. It's, there's still, I mean, you know, again, if our thoughts were revealed, everybody would be a sinner. You know, everybody would like if our thoughts were all projected out there for everybody to see, everybody go, man, you're fucked up. No, what we'd find out is that we're all the same. Like, we're all the same. We're all having these battles between light and dark. So the best thing that I can tell you is that I have learned to align them. And when I'm in a mood not to be around people, I'm not around people. If I'm in a mood to be around people, I'm around people. If I'm in a mood to be on stage and to project a message because I believe that it needs to be projected. And remember that when I'm on stage, it's not about me, you know, and this is a big difference between what I feel like my brand, so to speak. When you go and you listen, I don't go off of scripts. I don't go off of, you know, an intent to sell. I get yelled at literally, because when I get invited to go speak, they'll say, you need to sell something so that we can make some revenue off of you. And I'm like, that's not how I'm built. So just don't bring me into your event. What I'm going to do is I'm going to reach and move and fucking twist people's hearts and minds around the idea that transparency and progress and challenging themselves and looking at the person in the mirror is going to be the thing that's going to free them from this world that we live in, called being controlled by our past, our mistakes, and fear of the future. That's what I'm on stage to do. That's why it's the best place to put me is at the beginning of everybody's event, because it puts everybody in the same alignment, right? So the thing here, you know, you're talking about, it's like stoicism. I believe in stoicism. I love stoicism. I love the idea of eudaimonia, right? The thing that I think is a challenge in that is that we think we're supposed to be happy. You know, happiness is just one of the spectrum of colors. There's as many emotions, or should be as many emotions as there are colors in the spectrum. And people don't understand. They're trying to avoid it, which puts them on antidepressant pills and turns you into a zombie. Yeah, you're not feeling panic anymore, but you're not able to get an erection anymore. You're not able to have sex. You're not able to smile. You're not able to do a bunch of these things because you're killing your emotions. Well, your emotions should be fueling you. even the bad ones. And who the fuck said that we were supposed to be happy every minute of every day? That's what, that's a jester in a court, right? It's not a king. A king gets pissed. A king is happy. A king is, that has all of this, the emotions of the spectrum, but is able to direct them for a legacy of doing good, right? And no, I know all kings in the history of the world were not good. It's not my point, okay? I've gotten so many things pointed out online, brother. I'm just pointing them out before they can.
Yeah, gotcha. I understand. No problem.
So, but the idea here is that you're not, happiness is great. Progress is better. That's all I was saying.
So, so that's incredible. So when you seek for progress, you said you can't have progress unless you have this outcome or this destination. Yep. What is your process to create the deliberate, intentional actions that bring you to the progress? And what sensation do you experience when you realize you have progress?
Yeah, I love it. Here's the thing. You asked a question, how, right? And this is one of the things that I think makes people the most miserable, is that they don't know how to do anything that I'm talking about. And what I will tell you is you don't need to know how, you need to know why. And when you set up specifically what your outcome is, and here's the other thing. It's not hiding from you under some rock or at the top of a mountain behind a guru. It's not hiding behind the covers of a book. It's not hiding on stage with a guru that's going to tell you what your life is all about. It's in your heart already. Not mine, not yours. It's in the person who's hearing these words. It happened, whatever your purpose is, that you would love to leave a legacy of planting the most flowers of anybody else on the planet, or building an orphanage for people, or curing cancer, or whatever it is. You already know. You've just buried it. So it's not a matter of, what's the process that you go through, the 7 steps to, and funny enough, my first book had 7 steps in it. Now I make fun of everybody that's got 7 steps because it's an awareness of what already exists inside of you. And that's what freaks everybody out, freaked me out, was to say, this is what I'm supposed to do. And we bury it under fear, embarrassment, the pin that we put in ourselves because of the mistakes we made, blah, blah, blah. So if you just stop, took a breath and go, what is my legacy? And then you just sat with that for a few minutes. And then you go, okay. And you allow the goosebumps on your arms to show up. You allow the quickening of your breath. You allow the speeding of your heart just a bit as you start to see all of the possibilities, not only seeing it done, but seeing the travails that you're going to have to go through on your way to it, the failures where you're going to fall on your face, where you're going to be embarrassed, where people are going to leave you, where you see all of that stuff, and it creates in you all of these emotions that everybody's trying to drug the fuck out of them, except for this time, you're not afraid of them. You use them. They feel good. They feel in the right place. They feel in the right spot. They feel in the flow. You go, I could use this as energy to get off my ass and to go do something to help orphanages or inner city kids or whatever it is that comes up for you, right? And then the how goes, here's the thing, move, bitch, get out the way because here I come, right? It has nothing to do with me. Let me give you 7 steps to your ultimate outcome and fuck all that. The point is, get off your ass and go do something. And what's going to happen is you're going to get an outcome. And the faster you can get at turning that outcome into, was it moving me towards my legacy or away from it? I won't do any more of that, or I'll need to do more of that. That's how simple this is.
Yeah, it's so funny because it is simple. So I read once that men almost universally go through these various stages of life. By the way, I don't know are you familiar with Jack Donovan? He wrote The Way of Man, Becoming Barbarian. Okay, cool. So, and he's touched upon this a little bit, but we reach a stage and it's kind of like we fulfilled all of Maslow's hierarchies within our own life. And so we reach a stage where what we seek is legacy, but it's almost absolutely and utterly unknown in early manhood, in your 20s, late 20s. It's like this concept that's hard to even fathom. What does that mean, legacy? Because we potentially switch those words with fame or pleasure or fulfillment or all of these things. So my question is, for the people that are at the stage of life where a legacy is a desire, but they're still trying to build a business that takes care of them. Like, how do you marry those two? Now, do they still just go for legacy? Do they forget about the fact that, shelter, food, for like what do they do?
There's a path. It's a good question, brother. And the point here is that you said something earlier, right? I mean, legacy, defined for me is what will I have stood for? Okay, it's not necessarily an amount of money. It's not it's what will I have stood for? What will the things that what will the record show that I sacrificed for my fellow human beings, my family, and left behind? Okay, so there's really no business plan that leads to that. It's like, these are the actions that I'm going to partake in. And not having a father that demonstrated all that, it took me a hell of a long time to be able to understand what the difference between right and wrong was, And and then the second thing is that, I want to be doing something I'm passionate about. That is the biggest line of bullshit that keeps people broke more than anything, any one simple line I've ever heard in my entire life. I
so agree, man. I so agree.
You can't, just because, look, am I passionate about cleaning toilets? Hell no. Am I passionate about the people cleaning the toilets? Hell yes, right? It aligns with what I'm doing. Now, the thing about success, here's the thing, that people that are really energetic and want there to be a bunch of drama and excitement in life, is when you bring that into your business, you will always go out of business. You will always be broke, because the dichotomy about business is that it's supposed to be massively repetitive and massively boring. That's what a cash machine is. Okay. The less drama, look, intellect high, drama low. Profits high, drama low. Drama high, profits low. Drama high, intellect low. Right.
That's good.
And in business, your intellect is your competitive advantage, which means you keep the drama at a minimum, which means that you keep people in alignment with the things that make them happy. You keep you keep them on their path towards using your vehicle to get what they want out of life, not what you want out of life. Then you've got a machine that's set up, and it's so boring. And look, I crashed my first 3 companies. I went bankrupt 3 times. 3 companies, because I was very highly motivated for variety and excitement. And I went to my businesses to provide that for me, instead of doing what I do now, which is jump out of airplanes, rappel into canyons, head first off of the sky needle, those kind of things. And in my business, I have to put people in place that are okay with repetition and love that kind of thing. And I get out of my business once it reaches that point, and I hand it to people who love repetition. I don't like it, right? And so at the end of the day, it's not about being passionate. It's about being passionate about the people and what I'm going to do with the profits. And those profits are the things that feed people. They rescue little girls in foreign countries from the sex trade and blah, 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 blah. That's what the profits in my businesses do.
I love that, man. That's so good. So one of the things that is really healthy is when we experience awe, like that sense. When you said sit back and ask yourself, what is it? And let the goosebumps flow. That's a moment where you've experienced awe. It's like you have to almost shut down so that your mental framework can upgrade itself to intake the information that creates this emotion in you that causes serotonin and dopamine to squirt from your brains. I mean, we are so complex. And so I try to have regular moments of awe, because the awe cleanses me of all the garbage that just comes in. And so because of that, I enjoy reading. Every year I take my kids on a rite of passage trip, and it's out there that I try to help them experience awe. I took my son to the top of Kilimanjaro last year, before that Mount Blanc. And it's more than just the achievement of reaching the top. It's sitting up there and then literally looking around and contemplating the fact that the vast, the stars, the trillions of them in this galaxy, it produced every particle that is inside of you, yet you have more atoms inside of you than there are stars out there. It's these things that just blow your mind when you see the sun rise and you see the vast colors that don't really exist. It's just photons bouncing around in your cornea. Your optic nerve takes that information and then it processes for you. You created it. This image that causes sensations to flow through you that can even bring you to tears. Yep. But it's not there. You created it. This sensation of awe is fascinating to me, that we're wired to actually experience it. I wonder evolutionarily, why are we wired to be able to experience awe? But it's so beneficial. There's all kinds of studies on it. You can look them up. Recently, what is something that has brought you to that, like the ravages of awe, where you get those goosebumps, where you just blew your mind? Like what's something, and you may have to think about it for a minute because it's not something that people really talk about that often, but what is it, if you can recall?
It's right on the tip of my tongue, because here's one thing that I do. I'll give it a different word, but it's gratitude. Okay. And I get to experience that every morning. I mean, I'm not a big, sit and cross my legs and do that. Like, that works for some people. My brain, it doesn't work. Like, I can't sit in silence. What I have chosen to do is what's called an active meditation, where I choose what I'm actually going to think about and I focus all my attention and direction towards that. One of the emotions that I experience daily and multiple times, but for certain, first thing in the morning and last thing before I go to bed, is this thing called gratitude. And I can find a point in my life. Everybody can, even the ones that are the most drama queen or drama king people out there that are like, my life is the worst. Well, you're breathing. So you know what? You're better off than a lot of people. This, that, or the other. There's really no place. Some of the most grateful people are the ones that are in the most physical, emotional, or mental pain.
Absolutely.
And that's why I hear all of these other people who have very weak spines whining and bitching, moaning. I'm like, look, you complain. I complained about my shoes until I met a man with no feet, right? And what that comes back to is this idea of being grateful on purpose, and really leaning into finding those moments. Like the first time that my daughter opened her eyes and looked up at me and smiled, right? I have this one memory of her that was actually caught on film, which I think is phenomenal, that I have it. But I have it in my mind as clearly as I do in this picture that's staring me right now in my office, where when she was 3 years old, she was having this little photo shoot done. She was crying, and I was late to the photo shoot. She was crying for her mom, and then she's like, hurry up and get here. And I showed up. I came around the corner, and there's this big smile on her face going, it's my daddy. And right as daddy came out of her mouth, they snapped the shot. See, and it just is clear as, and it brings goosebumps to my skin, because it's moments like that where I go, I get to be her daddy. I get to bring that smile to her face. And then I can tell you that when we were on a rescue, and I won't tell you where, but when we were on a rescue and you get to see the little girls crying because they realize that they're not there to have sex with older men, and that they're actually being rescued, and the tears that are coming down their face and the looks on their face that they know and understand that they're not being bought anymore. That is something in my heart. When you see the food handed to a kid or a husband or a wife that hasn't eaten in 3 days, and you see those looks on their faces with tears coming down their life, that even if it wasn't a million people in that particular moment, it was that person that me getting out of my own fucking way to feed what changed their life in that particular moment. And it's those moments, and I could keep going and going and going and going, because those are the moments that I'm grateful for, when I overcame myself and I was able to enjoy and see the things that me making the right decisions could change the world in these small, little, tiny, positive ways. Because if I was like my adopted father, then that moment wouldn't have happened with me and my daughter. And I can tell you, with all of my kids, I've had these moments. They have no idea what it was like to be raised in a home where it's basically torture constantly, walking through the door, getting hit in the face, knocked down 2 flights of stairs. They don't have to experience that. And that makes me happy, brother. It makes me feel gratitude. It makes me want to fight this fight until the day that I die, because there's people out there that need people like us that can stand to stand.
Yeah, man, goosebumps as you talk about that. So I was just not long ago at an event where they talked about Operation Underground Railroad. At that event, we raised $1 million for it. And my question because I saw the documentary that they put out that's online now. I think it's online at least. When you're in that moment where you're talking with a guy that is actually there, typically some white Western guy who's there to buy underage girls, and he's laughing about it, and I mean, just talking about the vilest of things. What do you do to not give yourself away facially, like with your body? How do you just sit there? Like, I'm really curious. I've
Yeah,
put myself in
well,
that situation, and I
yeah,
don't know. Dude, I got $3, man. I
yeah.
don't know that I could just sit there.
Yeah, I have three daughters too. So let me tell you what it was, because I had to face this very question. And it was, kill this guy, because I could have, kill this guy or not. And it comes down to state change. When I was a kid, how I would deal with my adopted father was I would go blank. Like there was a progression, right? And a lot of psychologists will call it disassociation. You become a different person, become a
Okay.
different personality to be able to deal with the horrors that are going on in your life. And so there was a progression. It would go gray, light gray, like a cloud, and then into dark gray, like a storm cloud, and then into black. And then I would come to, and he would have beat me up or whatever, or if I was in a situation, that I was beating somebody up, my fists would be bloody, whatever. Never women, by the way. I just want to make that crystal clear. Never have raised my hand to a woman. But it was always in those fights. And I think that happened, even the fact that I never raised my hand to a woman, fact was because I stood in front of my mom and took her beatings most of the time. But there was this progression. And it all comes down to whether you're having panic attacks, whether you've got bipolar disorder. Trust me, I've been diagnosed with all of these things, and all of it is just a choice of thought, right? It's a breathing, physical, how you hold yourself physically, the thoughts you allow, physiology, focus, language, and emotion. And then we do the things that we do because of something called repetition and intensity. Okay, that's the formula. So, but it hadn't happened in years and years and years, and I'm sitting in a particular situation where I'm having this existential challenge that you're talking about. Do I kill this guy, or so what went through my head was, number one, my breathing's changing. I need to shift my breathing. Number two, if I do this, I'm going to be in a third world prison, right? Completely by myself. If I make it out of here alive, period. That's number one. Number two is, every girl that we're here to rescue is not going home to a safe place tonight if I allow my emotions to get away with me. And so I just started focusing on my breathing, focusing on the outcome, and it changed everything. I was able to sit through the deal and make it happen. So it's a fascinating real world example of state change and state management.
That is fascinating. So these guys, when you see them and you look at them, what can you identify about them? What are the common traits that they have? These ones that go and abuse little girls.
There is no trait, brother. I mean, here's the thing: the people that we've run into, the people that I've run into, the people that I've seen that are doing this, you have in your mind that there's these toothless, scraggly, drug infested. It's not them. It's people that look like your pastor. It's people that look like your banker. It's people that look like the business moguls that are out there in the world. It's those people. And people's uncles and people's dads and people there's no way of just identifying anybody by the way they look. It's impossible. And I'm not saying there's some, scummy people that are out there that do this, but at the end of the day, to be able to go where these things go and to do this stuff, you have to have some money to get there and some money to be able to play in that game. And that's the unfortunate part. And that's what makes this difficult, is because of the politicians, the high-powered, wealthy people. You're constantly and always in danger of making a mistake about who is involved in this thing. And most of those people are people that have been put in a position where they're not ever being told that they can't do stuff because they have power or money.
Well, are they all sociopaths? So they don't care about anyone else but themselves? Do you think they experience guilt or
Again, brother,
remorse?
one of those things. Some of them that are arrested are some of the like they're pulled out of communities, and people go, that person has raised more money for charity. That person has spent more time in helping this cause or that cause. They're so kind to their family. Like I just can't tell you. I would love to be able to paint a picture of these people. What I would rather do is eliminate the supply for their sick fucking games.
Yeah.
Like that's the one thing that I can focus on, because I can't put my finger on who the hell's doing it, and at the end of the day, it's just like I've always felt this way, Trevor, in one fashion. If we can shame people out of smoking cigarettes, we damn straight should be able to shame people out of having sex with underage.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. We had this family trip for spring break. It was the kids' spring break. We were in Vegas. And a lot of my talk with my wife was about, like, how do I raise our girls so that they won't get to the point where they are pressured or whatever into doing what they don't want to do. And so I'm asking you, kind of like dad to dad, further down the road, what are you doing to give your girls a sense of power in a world that does not do that?
Chip implants and gun training, but no, I'm just kidding. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you the biggest thing, because again, remember that, I've had a progression of my older children to my younger children, and there's a bunch of awareness of things that goes on. And at the end of the day, what you have to do is you have to be like, and this is, again, remember, I made all kinds of parenting mistakes when my son, it's a wonder that my son doesn't hate my guts. We figured this stuff out, but he was going to be an athlete, and I was forcing him into football, and I was forcing him into wrestling, and he hated both of those things, but he was this beautiful musician that I didn't figure out until I had damn near, pushed the relationship to a breaking point, that I realized, oh, he's a musician. I should be celebrating what he is, not lamenting what he's not. And that was my first son, and then made mistakes with my, with my oldest daughter. And then there's this progression. And so when you ask me this, I want you to understand that I have made every parenting mistake, just like I've made every other mistake in the world. The one mistake that I don't make, and the one that you probably won't ever make, I'm sure, is not loving our kids, right? Everything I've ever done has been out of love. But, that has led to disastrous outcomes, right? So our strategies have to change in these areas. So what I will tell you is that I now believe that me being the man that I want my daughter to marry is the biggest component of my actions. And I take her on dates. My youngest daughter now, I take her on dates. I took my older daughters on vacations where when I finally understood this principle. And now it's like I take my youngest daughter out. I pick her up in a car. We go to daddy-daughter dances. We go out to movies. I hold the door for her. All of these things that there's people out there going, well, you're enforcing the gender. Blah, blah. Look, this is my life. This is my family. And I believe that at the end of the day, whatever she is, she's going to be better off for having a father who shows compassion, love, and a sense of masculinity, that true masculinity is to protect and to serve.
Yes.
End of sentence.
Yes, dude. I love that. So that's the conclusion that I had years ago with my oldest daughter. And I feel like that's my only defense. If they will filter every option that they have through the eyes of, is this dude better or worse than my dad?
Right.
And I feel like there's a fighting chance. And I'm not patting myself on the back. I, like you, have gone, I'm way further than I was, and I have a long ways to go. But, same thing, man. I can't be accused of not loving them. So I love that. So, dude, Jason, you're an incredible human being, man. And I feel like we could go for hours. Thank you so much for coming on. How can people contact you? How can they find you online? And what awareness would you like them to have right now regarding things that you're involved in that they too can get involved with?
Well, I love the question. And, the best place to hear me talk and to hear, because I don't sell anything on my Facebook page. I'm not pitching. I'm not a life coach. I'm not nothing against life coaches. I'm just not one of them. I don't sell stuff to go to my seminars. I don't have seminars, those kind of things. I do training in the business world a little bit, a couple times a year. But other than that, if you come to my Facebook page, it's a private page. Just send me a messenger message and say, I heard you on Trevor's podcast or whatever it is. Then I'll allow you into my group. It's a private group. I don't let everybody in for a lot of reasons. But you can also look at feedabillion.org. And that's with Ambush Jane. I'm actually the CEO of that. Ambush Jane was the founder. Tony Robbins, the matching donor. Operation Underground Railroad, Child Liberation Foundation, A New Dawn. These are the things that I'm working on now, charity wise, and philanthropy wise. And then again, just Jason Cisneros on Facebook. Is the best place to find me. I've got an Instagram, but I really only hang out on my personal page on Facebook. And that's about it. JasonCisneros.com. And then also Anton J. It's ANTONJAE.com. That's my consulting business. So those are all the places.
So, and for your consulting business, because we have a lot of business owners that are listening, what is your ideal, like if you could identify them and say, these are the people that I can help, like how would you describe that real quick so that people can filter themselves through this?
Yeah, again, the consulting comes from years and years and years. A lot of the reasons why I didn't want to write a book and didn't want to do speaking on this subject is because most of the people that are writing books and on stage are full of shit. So, and they don't apply their own stuff. The only thing that they're making money at is that book that they're out hawking. Yeah. But my stuff, the things that we teach are incremental improvement, interconnectedness. Not every business. My mentor, Keith Cunningham, who's the Rich Dad and the Rich Dad Poor Dad book, says business is not a bathrobe. One size does not fit all. And so the things that I would say for these businesses is just get in touch with us. There's a lot of principles that we put in place. I've got a book that is coming out towards the end of the year here. And we basically, I wrote a book to my earlier self who went bankrupt 3 times and made all those mistakes. And I wrote it from a perspective of all the lessons that I've learned over time and over 100 turnarounds, owning a couple dozen in my own portfolio and then doing consulting for, over 70 more. I've learned a lot of lessons and it's about sequencing. It's not about what you do. It's about why you do it and in what sequence. And a lot of people are out there doing the right things and have over a period of time. They just haven't sequenced them the right way. Any blow Joe that's listening to your show right now that has been in business for longer than 3 years is more knowledgeable about business than 98% of the people that you're going to go watch on stage, which are just big pump-up sessions in most cases. So, if you want to learn about sequencing, just give us a ring. Just give us a call. Get a hold of our team at Anton J and have a conversation. Even that, I've heard that 45 minutes with one of either me or my strategists will change a lot of lives, and we don't necessarily always get paid for that. But if you're not doing good things already, if you're not contributing, if you're not donating, if you're not passionate about easing suffering, don't even call, because we're not interested in talking to you.
Love it. Jason, thank you so much. Audience, thank you. We will see you tomorrow on the Trevor Chapman Show. Hey everybody, Trevor here. As you know, we do not sell sponsorship on the podcast. I wanted to make sure that I was never prostituting the value and giving anything less than passion and interest, and that I was never doing it for any reason that could potentially distract me from my original mission with the podcast, which is to connect with great people and allow others to connect with them as well. And once you start making money on something, oftentimes your mission changes slightly. It just has to. It's the nature of business. However, so as a result of that, I've been self-funding the podcast, both with time, my team's time and everything. But there is a way that you can help support us. I am launching a black card mastermind, a black label mastermind, a black internal mastermind, whatever you want to call it. It's going to be a VIP mastermind wherein you'll have access basically to absolutely everything that I've ever published. You'll have access to information that I've never published. You'll have direct contact with me. And I'm bringing in incredible people like partners of mine. Ryan Davies sold Found.com for $100 million. He's the CEO of Curza. Other guys like Dewey McKay, the COO of MX, that took them from a few million to the largest banking software on the planet, and other partners that I have had or will have. I'm bringing them in and curating the best mastermind, the best group, the best location for information all around on the internet. And this is the Trevor Chapman Mastermind membership program. Within there, I'll be showing you how I went from 0 to a top 5 podcast in 20 days. Within there, I'll show you how I went from 0 to 1 million followers in 45 days. Within there, I'll be sharing with you all of my secrets. So please support this by going to trevorchapman.com/podcast VIP. Again, trevorchapman.com/podcast VIP. And for those of you who are listening, it has not officially launched yet. As such, it is 50% off. trevorchapman.com/podcast VIP. Let's move.